Hello and welcome to Calico Flower Studio. Today I am going to share with you a little game that I made up for myself. And it was so interesting because, of course, as I've said before, I really believe that play is a beautiful avenue for learning and experimenting. So I don't know, is it a game? Is it an experiment? I don't know. But today I'm going to share with you the rules of my game, or rather the methodology of my experiment, and show you the results and share the analysis with you. So buckle up, but also sit back and relax and enjoy the analysis. Okay, so like I said, this is a mixed media game or experiment that I just kind of made up one day. For my game, what you need are 6 small pieces of paper. And the object of the game is to use 3 mediums on all 6 pieces of paper. And all 6 pieces of paper will use the same 3 mediums. However, what creates the interesting results, in my opinion, is the fact that you will use each medium on each card in a different order. And the reason why this changes the results so much is because, well, for me at least, as a mixed media artist, I find that because when I'm making a larger work of art, I find myself switching back and forth between mediums all the time, and I just like kind of cycle through different mediums. I'll go from drawing to painting to collaging, and then I'll go back again and draw some more, and then I'll collage again, and then I'll paint some more. But each time I go back with a new medium, I find myself responding with that particular medium in a different way because there are other things present on the paper or the canvas. That's what I find so interesting about mixed media, is that I see every medium as a kind of language. And everybody uses their medium in a different way and has a different flavor to their language, I guess. But, playing this game with myself enlightened me to how I use each medium as a kind of language. And then also when those mediums interact with each other, how that language shifts and responds to the other. So, the way that I determine which order each card will receive each medium is I pick my mediums. So my mediums yesterday were pencil, so drawing, paint. I used watercolor paint specifically, which the type of paint can definitely be important. So for this particular game, I used watercolor paint. And then the third was collage, which is just what it is. It's collage, it's whatever. But I guess it's important to note that I was using collage bits from my little things bin, which are just really tiny little scrap pieces of collage, which did make a difference, actually. It's much more limiting. And that's another thing about experiments and research, is you have to acknowledge the limitations of your experiment. So one limitation of this is that this is a small piece of paper. I don't always work on paper, and I rarely work this small, and that definitely changes the way I work. And the collage pieces I used were kind of like limited in their size, so they're all very small. Also, I don't typically limit myself to 3 rounds of mediums or media. When I'm working on a larger piece, I'll usually cycle through several rounds of different media. So just a heads up, this is a judgment-free zone. This is just for fun. It's an experiment. We're playing here, right? We're just kind of doing something and then gaining insight from it, right? Anyway, okay, so here we go. First, so I've got my 3 mediums. So first, I take 2 cards that are going to start with drawing. So I'll do, on these 2 cards, I'm going to draw first, okay? And then on the next 2 cards, I'm going to paint first. And then on the last 2 cards, I will collage first. So each one is going to start out differently. Well, the first round, you know, there will be 2 cards that sort of have identical process. But the second round is where each card becomes unique. So let's start with the drawing cards. On this card, my second step, let's say I'll paint. Okay? And then on this card, my second step will be to collage. And then the third round will be whatever I have not done yet. So this card is draw, paint, collage, and this card is draw, collage, and paint. Okay? And then you just continue that process. So now every card has a unique order of operations. Is that a math term? Algebra? Yes, order of operations. I remember that's algebra. Anyway, so let's dive in. Okay, so let me show you the results of round 1. So this is medium number 1 for all of the cards, and these are pictures that I printed out of the pieces, because as I was going yesterday, I was taking photos of each stage in the process. So those are my drawings, these are my watercolors, and my collage. Okay. So this is round 1, sweep 1. Doing this round alone allowed me to think about how I intuitively approach each medium just on its own, by itself. Let's talk about drawing. So I find it fascinating that when I am prompted to draw something, I just kind of like instantly, instinctively, whatever, intuitively, look around, and I have this impulse to record what's in front of me. I feel the need to include details and be accurate to an extent, you know, and like the act of drawing is a really interesting tool for more abstract mark making, but when I played this game yesterday, that's just kind of like what my mind went to first, was like, I'm gonna draw a thing. I was trying hard to be like accurate and you know, make it clear that this is Dahlia, and it was kind of difficult drawing her from life because of course she's like moving her head around and like rolling around and, you know, licking herself and like I'm just like, so I had to sketch it out real fast and then sort of do some of it from memory and like sort of like move my head around like, hey, can you like turn to the side a little bit? but it was fun anyway. So the drawing stage was very accurate and representational, not abstract. So these are the printouts of my collage stage. So yeah, not representational at all. Well, I can't say at all because you could see something in these. But your mind has to kind of take a leap to get there, you know? So, like in this piece, you might see a landscape and a moon. I mean, that one's actually pretty obvious, but I'm not representing a landscape. Like, you're not going to look out your window and see a landscape that looks like this. But it's suggested, right? And same with this. It's suggested. It's a suggested subject. So we have something right here. We've got two little ears. That's what I see and what I was thinking, and a blankie and a window. What I find so interesting about collage is it teeters between that representation and abstraction, but at the same time it almost creeps into that realm of sculpture because it's like you're assembling an object, you're assembling objects basically to make something that suggests something else, right? And really what interests me the most about collage is how visceral it is. It's like you run your hand over it and it is raised, it's got literal texture, not the illusion of texture. It is a texture that you can feel with your skin. So I love that. It's just so rich to me. It's juicy. I love it. So anyway, now the next medium, watercolor. So these are my watercolor stages. Now, these are like, if there's anything suggested here, it is very subtle. Because I gotta be honest, man, when it comes to watercolor, I know that watercolor can be used in many ways, and like I said earlier, everybody uses each medium differently, and maybe they're drawn to using it in a different way, or in different moments they use it differently. Most of the time when I'm using watercolor, I am really just playing around. I'm like a little kid in a puddle, just sort of blah, 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 like I just kind of let my mind go, and I really very little thought going on here. I am just putting color down, letting the water pool, you know, dabbing other colors into different colors and seeing what happens and having fun. And I love that about watercolor. It's just so loose. Now, let's talk about where things get a little different, where things split off and some interesting stuff starts to happen. Okay, so round two. Some interesting stuff happening to my drawings, my collages, my paintings, as I add different mediums to them. Yeah, I learned a lot about the way that I make and the way that I use different mediums. Okay, so these, you remember these, the two drawings, the drawing of the window and the drawing of Dahlia. But the drawing of Dahlia, the second stage for that one was paint. And then this piece, the drawing of the window, the second stage of that was collage. So, in general, I found that when I draw first, whatever I do after that, I tend to want to respond to the imagery. And it's almost kind of ruled by that and dictated by that a little bit. The collage that I used, it's placed along specific lines. You know, I've sort of framed the window here, and I was brave enough to cover up part of my drawing with this orange piece, but only because I knew that the tissue paper would allow some of the drawing to peek through. And same with this little piece of tissue paper that actually had a drawing on it. So this cat is not part of the original drawing, but it's part of the collage piece. But anyway, but otherwise, the collage kind of exists outside of the drawing, so it's like not interfering with it. These collage pieces in the window frame are literally in the exact shape of the window frame, so I'm hesitant to just obscure my drawing that I worked so hard on, right? And that's something that I try to let go of when I'm doing larger works, but on this smaller piece, I was afraid I would lose my window. This drawing bossed around my collage. Now, the watercolor is a little bit more loose, but still very much informed by the drawing. The fact that this is a drawing of Dahlia, like, clearly you can't really separate that from the fact that I used this pattern. It's even in her fur, like emphasizing the texture of her fur and enhancing the drawing. So in this case, the watercolor was also not only informed by the drawing, it was dictated by the drawing. So, you know, it's in the lines, coloring in the lines, like in the eyeball and the nose here. And I used the paint as a way to enhance the drawing in some way. I'm not saying I really like this painting, but that's just how the watercolor was used in this painting. It's still a little tight, little confined to the drawing. And so I learned that about myself. And so now, the next time this happens, I have a drawing and I'm going to make watercolor, I'm going to consciously think, how can I think outside the lines? If you know what I mean. So these two pieces had collage first, and then this one on the left had drawing second, and on the right had paint. So this piece, when I come at it with drawing, it's like not quite so representational, but somewhat. It's like I'm definitely responding to what's been suggested here by the collage, and sort of emphasizing some things about it. So, you know, I was kind of suggesting that this was an animal of some kind, and this is a window, and, you know, this is a blanket. And so I guess I sort of follow suit with the pencil, and my drawings are more suggestive than they are accurate. Even here, I'm like using pattern and line to suggest light coming through the window. That's interesting. And how the way I use pencil completely changes in response to what was there first, which was the collage. Now this piece, so I did the collage first, and you remember I felt it was sort of suggesting a kind of landscape imagery. When I collage first and then paint second, the paint is almost functions as like a space filler, you know? It's like I'm blocking off sections of the thing. So it's like, it's almost like a way to connect everything and pull everything together. It almost feels finished already, because there was so much, the paint added so much detail. And it almost created like a seamless connection between the collage and the paint. And when I make larger works, often people will look at the pieces and say, and like, they're almost confused, like, is this a painting or is it a collage? Is that paint or is that material? And then they get closer and they're like, oh my God, that's not paint. So it's like, that's what I love about combining mediums, is it's sort of like confusing. You know, it like begs the viewer to take a closer look. Finally, these are the two pieces that started with paint and then had something added to it. Again, the pencil, like the way that I drew on this piece changed. Still kind of suggesting something, but it's very loose and open and almost just kind of based on marks. There's echoes of these where I painted like little dots here. I sort of echoed that with the pencil, drawing these little circles in the top left. Here I did little swirlies with my paint, and so I'm mimicking that here with my pencil. The pencil, again, is responding to the sort of looseness of the watercolor and the playfulness of it, and it's sort of it's very free, and it's just playful. Now this one, I found myself with the collage responding to things like color and direction, flow, and texture. I felt compelled to be much more intentional about the texture of the pieces. I was more intentional about the colors. Kind of what I described to you earlier, where I want it to feel cohesive, the paint and the collage, not so much like they're starkly separate, but very integrated with each other. And I think that that's why I chose, I didn't choose, you know, a piece of a magazine or a photograph or something to put on this. I chose things that almost already had a painterly-like texture and did not depict like an image or like a straight up pattern. This has a pattern. That's kind of like my one little pop-up pattern, these polka dots, but it's very subtle. So I have to say, so far, in situations where I'm using just paint and watercolor, where I'm just using paint and collage first, at least within a small piece, in a small space, that feels the best to me. That's like my comfort zone right there. And I think it's because when it comes to drawing, I like to have lots of space if I'm going to really draw something, you know, and not just use it as a mark-making tool, like in this piece, where I'm just kind of making marks. So these are the final pieces, and these are the original works now. We're not looking at printouts anymore. Okay? With all three mediums on every card. So these are the two pieces, again, that started with drawing. The dahlia drawing and the window drawing. This was followed by collage and then paint. And this was followed by paint and then collage. This further confirmed my observation about how I like to use paint to fill space and sort of connect everything and integrate everything. This was different. I'm a little less precious about the drawing though. And maybe it's because I draw Dahlia so much and then collage over her to the point that she's unrecognizable. I like to obscure things, and that's what I found myself doing here. I was a little less shy about somewhat obscuring the drawing with the collage, so I had a little bit of fun doing that. I still wanted to preserve parts of the drawing. I had a little bit more fun with this, and that's typically what I do with larger mixed media work. You know, it's so funny. I feel like the pieces here that started as drawings were really difficult for me. Maybe it's because they were so small. Because you know what? When I do create large works, I always start with a drawing. I always start with a drawing. That's the first step. But I'm like a lot less precious about the drawing when it's big for some reason. There's going to be so much space that I can complicate with paint and collage and other marks and other mediums, that like I just don't care about the drawing by the end of it. You know what I mean? But I just cared so much about the drawings in these little ones. So that is interesting, an interesting observation that taught me a little something about myself and the way I work. Something about scale. That's the thing. So this was collage, draw, paint, and this was collage, paint, draw. Now I'll just go ahead and tell you this one I did not add very much drawing to it. Very little. There's a piece of hair on here. Very little drawing. That's the drawing right there. That's it. I just added some lines. I just felt like it didn't need much else. So I guess at this scale, when it comes to paint and collage, when I do if I paint and collage first, drawing becomes almost unnecessary. That's what I got out of this. It's like just a little extra. With this, again, the paint, just like with the other piece that started with drawing and collaging, the paint as a last step just became a way to fill space. That was it. I was responding to, you know, the sections of the composition, but filling space to connect everything else. I'm not saying being a space filler is invaluable. I use it all the time as a way to lead your eye from one part of a painting to another by simply placing blocks of color in a certain way that gives your eye like a bridge from one side to the other. So that's what I learned from using paint last. Finally, we have these pieces that started as watercolor and then ended as something else. So I'm still kind of perplexed because I found the collage stage of this one challenging. At least at this scale, the collage also felt superfluous and extra and unnecessary. And so it's very spare. It's just in little pieces. It's not really even connected. Something that I've always felt was really beautiful and captivating was doing some kind of like abstract watercolor base and then just doodling over it with pencil or pen. And I used to do that a lot in my visual journals, and I thought that alone was just simple and beautiful and I wouldn't like put collage over that, you know? And it wasn't a background, it wasn't simply a background for something else either. It was in all its glory, like the focus. So I think that's what's going on in this. I think I just, I was hesitant to add collage, but I did. So that's, but I guess my feelings about it are very revealing about the way I use mediums and the way I think about them. Finally, I wanted to talk about this one last because it's my favorite. I feel like in smaller works, and actually if you think about like the way I visual journal on this channel, or the way that I make smaller mixed media works at this more like closer to this scale, this is my natural kind of like instinctual order of operations. Paint, collage, draw. So painting alone is a background, right? It's just a base to give you some color to bounce, to, you know, to jump off of. Collage is a structure, you know, it's, that's like kind of more like the star of the show with all its texture and intricacy in the way that it just kind of breaks up the background. And you know, like I said, I love the way paint and collage play together. And then finally, the drawing at this scale is usually something, it's just like an added little cherry on top, just like it was with this piece, which also started with paint and collage. The line, the drawing was just a little extra superfluous thing. Here I do feel I had a little bit more breathing room to sort of play with mark making. So there you have it. I learned quite a bit about myself. Maybe you can too. So this is my mixed media game. I don't know what to call it. The mixed media game. 3 mediums, 6 cards, 3 mediums, draw, paint, collage. I don't want to call it that because you could repeat this process with whatever you want. You could do acrylic paint, you could do markers, crayon, stitching, whatever you want. Just play around, have fun. Don't judge yourself. Who cares what it looks like? As long as you are open to the way it makes you feel and your response, your kind of like internal response to things, and just take note and notice and learn something about yourself and the way that you make art. Or just, you know, don't think at all and just do it because it's fun. It doesn't have to be as scientific and graduate thesis-like as this video was. So, I hope that you found this to be as interesting as I did. I know it was all about me, but please, I encourage you to go and do this yourself if you feel so compelled, and it will be all about you, and I love to know how it goes. So let me know in the comments if you do, or even if you don't, that's fine too. And please, if you enjoy my work, then I encourage you to subscribe to this channel. It really helps me just continue to spread creativity and mindfulness and processing life through the lens of mixed media to more people and bringing them into the mind of an artist. So thank you again for being here.